This is Lightning Power Lunch with Dave Mishkin and Greg Linnelli on Lightning Radio.
We had some good looks, some good chances. Bob made some good saves, or they got sticks on things. There's a couple power plays obviously that we'd like back. Couldn't get set up, but yeah, just one of those games where the chances we got just weren't going in.
It's a good team out there, and two teams going at it. I thought we could have a little more energy in the first and second, but I mean, we came back and gave ourselves a chance to win that game off the post at the end. So, I mean, that's just what happens. I just got to turn the page and look forward to tomorrow.
Just reeled off 8 in a row. You can't do that without some things going your way. And at some point, the bounce is going to bounce out instead of in. And, on a couple occasions, especially in the third period, that's what happened. And it was, I liked our effort. I liked the way the boys answered the bell in the third period and threw everything at them. And sometimes you got to tip your cap to the other team and the goalie. And that was it.
I think it's pretty fair. That's a pretty fair analysis.
I tip my cap to the Panthers and to Sergei Bobrovsky. I'm wearing a hat for those audio listeners.
We're going to talk about that probably for 45 minutes. We have Aaron Portzline from The Athletic, who's going to give us a little preview of Columbus, what to expect tonight. Should be another fun game, an important game. Nice bounce-back game, I think, for the Lightning. But let's dive into it with the game last night, partner, because I think, on the surface, you hate to lose to the Florida Panthers, an opportunity to gain ground on a team you're chasing, and that's disappointing. But Lightning gave up, you and I were talking about this, 2 goals on the road with a bunch of power play opportunities. I mean, if you were to tell me that before the game that, hey, look, you're going to give up 2. You're going to get, essentially 4 power play opportunities. Let's call it 5 officially. But, you're going to have a bunch of power play opportunities.
A bunch.
Yeah.
The last one lasted 9 seconds, but they had
right
a phenomenal chance even in that 9-second span.
If you were to kind of give me those elements before the game, I'd say, you know what? I think the Lightning have a good shot at getting at least points. They didn't.
Let's go even back from the kind of micro view of last night's game, which we have time today. I know Aaron's coming up at 12:15, so we may leave this and come back to it.
Right.
I was thinking about today, Greg. Usually I don't put a lot of value in this, but I want to go back to the games between the teams last year because I think it can be informative about where are the Lightning vis-a-vis the Panthers and where are the Panthers vis-a-vis the team that won the Cup last year. So they ended up playing 8 games last year. They had 3 games in the regular season series and they played 5 in the playoffs. The Lightning won 2 of those games. They won Game 4 of the playoffs when they were facing elimination, and they outplayed the Panthers in that game. They built a lead. They won it. They deserved to win. I'm not sure they deserve to win any of the others. I mean, the game that they won during the regular season, which was in Sunrise, I want to say Vasilevsky might have had a shutout in that game, but he faced... it was one of those 50-plus shot games. He stole that game, and the Lightning were badly outplayed at Amalie Arena in both games last year during the regular season. There was one, I think they lost 9-2, if I'm remembering right. And while some of the games in the series that the Panthers won were close, in fact, a lot of them were close, they had the upper hand. They were better than the Lightning last year. They were deeper than the Lightning last year. They made more crucial plays than the Lightning last year. And when I look at the 3-game set between the teams so far this year, the Panthers won in Amalie. That was the game when they scored 2 shorthanded goals on the same penalty and built a 3-1 lead. And they probably deserved to win that game, but they didn't dominate the game. Lightning got a shutout win against the Panthers the next night because it was a home-and-home back-to-back, and I thought the Lightning had the upper hand. And last night's game, which is closer to the playoffs now, we're closer to the start of the postseason, that was an even-Steven game. The Lightning matched what the Panthers wanted to do defensively. The Lightning matched it. It was another game where the Lightning kind of predicated their performance on defending well. Were they perfect? No. The one goal they gave up 5-on-5 was avoidable. They made a mistake, but the Panthers made mistakes too. This game probably had a few more scoring chances than the Lightning Capitals game did on Saturday. And for sure, the Lightning had more scoring chances in the game last night than they did on Saturday. They just weren't able to convert at the same rate. Tip your cap to Bobrovsky. And they got unlucky. They hit 2 posts. So where I see these teams right now, they are evenly matched. That's my assessment of where the Florida Panthers and Tampa Bay Lightning are at with 20-plus games left in the regular season. They may see each other in the playoffs. They may see each other as early as the first round of the playoffs, assuming they both get in, assuming they're staying on this course where it looks like the top 3 right now are going to finish in the top 3, and 2 of those 3 teams are going to meet in the first round. So I guess this is my roundabout way of saying, like, what we've been saying all year. The Lightning are a better team than they were last year. They're better defensively. They're deeper. They're more capable of handling what the other team is throwing at them. And look, I think Jack Michaels said it very plainly. I think Doug Plagans might disagree based on the interview we did with Doug yesterday. But the Panthers are not as good as they were last year. Now, they're plenty good. They're really, really good. Could they win the Cup again this year? Yes. But last year's team was a behemoth. I mean, it was a dominant team. And they're not the same team this year. They're not. I thought Seth Jones had a good debut. We'll wait and see if he is an important piece of the puzzle for them. He's a very, very good player. But you can just look at their numbers. I mean, they're not where they were last year statistically, and they're not where they were last year in terms of the standings position. I think they've come back to earth just a little bit, and the Lightning have elevated from where they were last year, and I thought we saw that played out on the ice last night. That was a very even game. I might even give a slight edge to the Lightning in terms of flow of play. Very slight, like not a huge advantage, but who made more tough saves in the game last night? Vasilevsky or Bobrovsky? Bobrovsky. That tells you something.
It's a good point, and Barkov made a couple plays.
Barkov was
Barkov's
fantastic.
first goal. So you can describe it better than I can, but I'll give you my perspective. He toes the blue line on his backhand. Who did he beat? Was it
Point?
It was Point. And Point almost seemed like at the blue line, a little stunned that he went that way. So Barkov makes that spin. But did you notice Reinhart give him a pick?
No, I didn't.
Go back and look at the goal. He gets there's another Lightning player. It might have been Hagel.
Maybe Kucherov.
It might have been Kucherov. That's who it was. Who you can see had a direct path to be with him. And whether it was intentional or not, we can have a conversation about it. But he gets picked by Reinhart, which gave Barkov room. And he's a great player, and sometimes great players just need a little bit of daylight, and that's what happened. But, I mean, he made a couple of plays. And, sometimes that happens too.
It was avoidable, though, Greg. I mean, this is where I come down. I agree. Right. Barkov made a really nice play there.
He also made a really good play.
Kind of a medium. I mean, both of his shots are kind of medium range shots that just beat Vasilevsky. Right. So look, Barkov can shoot. I mean, Vasi was good last night, but it wasn't a rebound. It wasn't a tip. I mean, I guess you just credit Barkov for making 2 really good shots. But to me, the reason the goal was avoidable, Lightning had the puck. J.J. Moser gets the puck. Panthers are applying some pressure. Moser gets the puck. He has 2 choices. I guess 3. The third would be try and skate it out. But he was pretty deep in his own zone. There was a little bit of traffic around him. So I understand why he said no to door 3. Door 1, flip it out. And we saw that a lot from the Lightning on Saturday against Washington. In fact, J.J. Moser joined me post-game, and I asked him about the key part of that win. One of the key parts was getting the puck out of the defensive zone because Washington is so dangerous offensively. He said, yeah, we were chipping it out. We were alleviating pressure immediately. So he chose door number 2. He chose not to flip it out, but he had time. He could have flipped it out. At worst, assuming it gets out, at worst, you're looking at an icing. Probably not. I mean, he could have floated that thing in the air and gotten it out of the zone. Instead, he tried to pass it. and it was offline. I mean, Point was the intended recipient, but it was a little too far in front of Braden. He couldn't get his stick on it, and Barkov blocks it just inside the blue line. So that was the biggest problem to me. That puck should have been out of the zone. Either he chips it out or make the pass that's on the stick. But once you try and make a pass, if the pass is offline, you're opening the door for trouble. So Barkov blocks it. The second problem was the one you just mentioned, which was how Point played it. That's not an easy play. Barkov is a big, strong man, and he's very good in tight spaces, and he's very hard in the puck. But we have seen this from like a Brandon Hagel type play there. Right. Hagel is just, he's pushing that body out of the zone. He is taking the body hard. Barkov has no room. Like, he's right at that blue line. And Point, I think, tried to check him, but I don't know if he was trying to take the puck away, but ultimately Barkov kind of took the check as a glancing blow and was able to pivot away. I'm not saying that was an easy play. It wasn't, but in that situation, when you understand who is there, like, just be incredibly hard on him so that you're forcing him and the puck. You're not worried about the puck, but if you force him out of the zone, the puck is going to come out of the zone too. And it didn't. And he was able to pivot free. Maybe there was that pick, which I didn't see, and he walked to a dangerous area and was able to snap it in. So the second goal, I mean, they lose the face-off, and it's a tic-tac-toe passing play. I mean, it's still a longer range shot, but again, we're talking about Barkov. That one, Vasi might have been screened a little bit. That one beat him high glove. Good shot from Barkov, and he started the sequence by winning the face-off. He was by far the best offensive player for the Panthers, and I might make the argument that he was the best player for the Panthers. I made him the first star. I mean, Bobrovsky was right there too. But he almost gave it away, literally, with, I mean, we talk about the giveaway takeaway stat. That was a giveaway by Alexander Barkov with the Panthers on the power play.
It was his best pass of the evening.
I mean, maybe that was a take. See, this is why I'm saying it's a hard stat. Like, is that more of a giveaway by Barkov or a takeaway by McDonough? McDonough was like that in football, like that safety who sees the play developing, steps right in front of the pass and intercepts it, and he is gone. Like, in football, that's a defensive touchdown. He had nobody around him. That was probably the worst pass I've ever seen Alexander Barkov make. And I've watched this guy play since he came into the league. I mean, I'm not seeing him every game. I'm sure the Panthers players would say he's a great player, but yeah, I mean, he's like everybody. Everybody makes mistakes. That was a horrendous pass, and Bobrovsky bailed out his team by stopping McDonough on the shorthanded breakaway. But outside of that play, Barkov, as much as anybody else, was the reason why the Panthers won the game. He was great in the circle, too. Played a lot. Where's final numbers? Finished just under 60% in the circle. Yeah. Played over 20 minutes. 4 shots, 2 went in. He was really, really good.
He I don't want to put Steve on the spot. I was going to say, do we have the ability to play a highlight while we're talking to kind of do a little breakdown? But it was Kucherov. I went back and looked at it.
Okay.
Now. He did get picked. There's no doubt about it. He did get picked.
Yeah. Look, the Lightning can't complain about the officiating, though. They had 7 power play chances.
I mean, that's the part that I keep coming back to. I mean, I just, on the road, how many times are you going to have that on the road, Dave? I mean,
how
he
many
might not
of those were high stick penalties? Like the 4-minute double minor was high sticking.
Yeah.
So 3 of their power plays were due to high sticks. 1 was puck over the glass. That's automatic.
The one on Gensel, you called it. That was malicious. Jeez.
That was a 4-minute. I mean, I guess they go back and look to make sure it was the player's stick and not like friendly fire. But I was wondering when they went back and looked at the replay if they might say this was a major. That was dirty. I mean, it was a dirty play by Lois Greenan.
Didn't look good.
Like sometimes you're trying to lift the stick and you clip the guy. Like he propelled his stick up.
He did. I mean, with force. It was like, you know what? I'm just going to go for it. And like,
right.
By the way, when Gensel was down,
is what it was. It was reckless.
Did the shot when Gensel's down? That might have had a chance to go in. By the way, it hits Gensel.
I saw that ice. when Eric did his recap. I guess I didn't really notice that.
I didn't notice it until I was looking.
Chafee shot. I think
Chafee?
Eric
Yeah.
Chafee had a shot that hit Gensel and prevented it from going.
I mean,
in.
it was like.
So look, the Lightning had a little bit of bad puck
Yeah,
luck. They did.
It happens.
But they
not why
played. They played pretty well.
Yeah.
Did they play a perfect game? No.
I think that's one of those games you and I are going to come back to and say they probably deserved a point.
Maybe
They probably deserved a point.
Yeah,
You know?
I think what's a positive sign is that it's not like they won 8 in a row and then they just laid an egg. And it was like they were due for a stinker. They didn't have a stinker last night.
No,
I mean they played well enough. I don't know that they deserved a point, but they played well enough to maybe get a point. They didn't. So now they have to bounce back tonight against a red-hot Columbus team. It's won 4 in a row. Aaron can fill us in on the particulars, but they lost to the Lightning on December 17th. The game the Lightning led 4-0 going into the third, and the Jackets made it 4-3. If you recall, they scored 3 goals in the third period, and the Lightning got the empty netter. After that game, they lost that game, the Jackets did. After that game, they've gone 18-7-3. And they've put themselves into a wild card position and potentially into the top 3 in the Metro. Depending, like New Jersey and Carolina are kind of, they're winning some, but they're losing some too. And the way Columbus is rolling, they may be able to get out of the wild card down the stretch. Jeez. They've been a great home team, and they have a lot of home games down. I keep saying down the stretch. What is it? 11 of their last 18 are at home. And they're playing game 61. So they only have, 22 games left?
Incredible.
So when they come back after this current road trip, they get 18 of the 18 games they're going to have left after this road trip. 11 are at home, where they have a phenomenal record, 26-4. So
I mean, you want to talk about let's bring in Aaron Portzline in from The Athletic. You want to talk about the Capitals being the surprise team. Can we say Columbus probably, with everything they've dealt through and just kind of where they are now?
Dean Evison is going to get votes for Coach of the Year for sure.
Come on. Aaron Portzline, he's a superstar. It's been a while.
Aaron doesn't get a vote for Jack Adams.
He should.
I'm a broadcaster, and I always take the brunt of, why isn't John Cooper won the award? I'm like, it's a regular season award. We have to vote before the playoffs begin, and there are high expectations for John Cooper's teams. Yeah. So other coaches usually get the votes.
Aaron, welcome.
Having said that, Dean Evison deserves votes. Dean Evison deserves votes this year.
When the Blue Jackets coach does not get a vote, I say, talk to the broadcasters, guys.
Yeah, you punt on that.
Nothing to do with it. I would have voted for him for sure.
Yeah.
What's going on, guys?
Well, tell us about the Blue Jackets. I mean, I was impressed that early season game in Columbus when the Blue Jackets won 7-6. Lightning had a big lead early. I mean, that was a fire wagon hockey.
Right.
But Brian Engblom and I actually had a conversation with Dean Evison, just the three of us after the morning skate. And he said 2 things. He said, first of all, I'm letting the horses out of the barn. I want these guys to feel good offensively, basically, and that has certainly played out. And the second thing he said is, I didn't realize until I coached this guy how good Zach Werenski was. Yeah. I'm letting him out of the barn. I think both of those things have happened. But sometimes when you play that sort of hockey and you give a lot of goals, you don't win more than you lose. But the Jackets are outscoring whatever defensive issues are there. So how have they kind of done it to this point? By scoring a lot.
Yeah. Well, you know what's really happened here. You mentioned Werenski. Clearly, he's elevated his where he was. He's moved up into a different stratosphere, and they've had some really good contributions from some veteran players. But what's happened here that's really pushed this thing up is, like 4 years ago, they undertook a rebuild, which I've been saying for a while now. The easiest part of rebuilding is to decide to rebuild. The first year's kind of fun because everybody's up for watching the kids play, and then it gets really rough. Like these, as you guys know, these young players, they do not just go straight up. There's all sorts of bumps and bruises and times when you start to question the process. But look at Adam Fantilli, Marchenko, Kent Johnson, Voronkov, Sillinger, all of these guys. Chinakov's back in the lineup tonight. He's missed 3 months. All of these guys just boom, like the light bulb came on for all of these guys. and it's really, I mean, they're on the cusp of having 5 20-goal scorers already. They've never had 5 in a season ever. So the talent level here, you don't know when the young guys are going to bloom, or in some cases if they're going to bloom, but they have really taken huge steps forward. And it looks like they've got a really potentially special mix there if they can just keep this group together. Werenski's back to the role he played with under John Tortorella, the Rover, where you'll see him tonight down below the goal line frequently. He's all over the ice, and they have they've really played with pace and with spirit this season. They're not really out of any game because they can score goals, way ahead of a franchise record pace. I think they're on the cusp of already scoring more goals than they did last year, with still 20-some games to go. So yeah, we're not used to seeing this. This is old hat in Tampa. We're not used to seeing this in Columbus.
Well, and the other thing too is, Aaron, just you mentioned a young team, and then dealing with everything this season with Johnny Gaudreau.
100%.
I mean, just what's that been like, dealing with everything there, the emotional roller coaster, but then to be able to focus and have the success they've had.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, these are always difficult ideas to express. I think Johnny is the focus. Honestly, I think he is what has allowed them to focus in a lot of ways. And the way that it's been handled, as awful as it is, and it is awful, as you guys know the story and all of it, from it has come kind of a really beautiful thing. Meredith Gaudreau's words at her eulogy, that she would want this team, Johnny would want this team to play as he played, to act as he acted. He loved being at the rink, loved being on the ice. She kind of gave them emotional permission, if that makes any sense, to not move beyond the grief, because that's always with them, but to carry it with them, and within that, honor him by, it's not wins and losses, but by playing with joy, having fun, and becoming a tight team. And this group is, I mean, it's hard for people who do what I do for a living to really step inside the room and feel confident in describing anything, but it does feel, and players have said this, that that room is as galvanized as it's been in a long time, maybe ever. And I do think this sort of grief has become, has been the galvanizing effect. I have to say this too. Talking about Johnny Gaudreau is not forbidden; it's encouraged. Dean Evason's been incredible with the way that he's handled it, with the way he's helped the team handle it. Veteran players have been great too. Sean Monahan is just a picture of courage. There's just so much that goes into it. But it's been, from the outside looking in, it's been something to marvel at and to witness.
And all of this kind of dovetailed the tragedy with Johnny and his brother and the family, and what you just talked about, and the Jackets having a very good season, kind of dovetailed with the outdoor game, which was scheduled over a year ago, but
right,
it came maybe at a perfect time. What was that experience like for you, somebody who's been in Columbus for all these years, and seeing kind of the appreciation of hockey and the team in a football stadium?
Yeah. I mean, there's so much to get to this. Just having the game was great. The scene was amazing. Like the way that they laid the ice out. The crowd was incredible. Second largest crowd ever to see an NHL game. And a lot of people were watching at home. ESPN just announced it's the most watched regular season game since they have been back in the NHL business in 2021. So huge ratings, 1.6, I think, average. It was great to see Ohio State and the Blue Jackets sort of work together, because that has not always been the case in Columbus. It was great to see the melding of the two organizations, if you will, and their traditions. It was great to see the Gaudreaus honored. That was a big part of it as well. For so many Columbus has, and you guys have probably spent enough time there to pick up on this. Columbus has a bit of an inferiority complex Always, whenever people come to town, we're very interested in where they're staying. Do they know where the good restaurants are? Can they go? Make sure you see this part of town. People are really, really proud of the city. People think of Cleveland and Cincinnati as being the major Ohio cities, and Columbus is bigger than both of those two combined by 250,000 people. Like, it dwarfs those two cities, but it doesn't have the reputation of those cities. So people there are always very interested in people having a good time, people leaving with a good impression and elevating themselves. And I don't know of anything really that could do it more than that outdoor game did. So many people came from out of town. Tons of Canadians made the trip down. Obviously, lots of Detroit fans who've probably been there before. But there were people from all over the country, all over the world that came to that game. And to see it in that 100-year-old stadium, that Roman Coliseum, or as close as you can get to it in America, was really cool, really neat, and it just made for an awesome scene.
Aaron, Mish and I have been talking a lot about what the Lightning may or may not do, at the trade deadline. I think a lot of teams in contention are probably having those conversations. Seeing where Columbus is now, do you feel like management's going to look at them and say, look, East has some good teams, Tampa Bay, Florida, and Toronto. I think everybody talks about them, but could you almost have that, why not Columbus? And if that's kind of what you're looking at, you think they would be more of a buyer or two at the deadline to help them?
I think they're going to be a moderate buyer, and I think there's a couple of reasons for that. I spoke with Don Waddell yesterday, the first-year GM. He wants to add a forward. I don't think he is as aggressive in that as he was maybe 3 weeks ago. So Kirill Marchenko, their leading goal scorer, suffered a broken jaw in Dallas, struck by a puck. And I think they all initially thought he was going to be out for 6 to 8 weeks, which is the typical broken jaw. So at that point, with Monahan out, with Marchenko out, he was in the business for a top 6 forward. I think he still wants to add a forward. It's probably wisest to say top 9 forward now. Mm-hmm. I think he wants another NHL guy, veteran NHL guy. But he does not want to bust up this team. Like, this team has really, as I said, galvanized, has really come together, has really been through a lot together. And I don't think he feels right pulling a significant player out of the mix before they get a chance to see where they can take this. Ivan Provorov is probably their top UFA. I think everyone expected before the season that he would be moved this week, if not before. I don't think they're going to get him signed to a contract. They're quite a ways apart. But the sense I got from speaking to Waddell yesterday is that he doesn't really expect to move him either. He just doesn't feel good busting this thing up as much as the players have done. The other element to all of this, more at forward than on defense, is I don't think he wants to add a player that's going to push Adam Fantilli down in the lineup, or a Voronkov, or a Sillinger, or a Kent Johnson. I think he wants these young players to feel that playoff drive, that push for the playoffs, and if they're so fortunate, to feel the playoffs. Like Adam Fantilli, his game has really elevated since Monahan went down. Monahan might be back late March. To see a 20-year-old kid in the NHL, and you guys have seen this before with Stamkos, but to see him hang with the best players, produce, I think he's at 20 goals, or he's close to 20 goals. He may have 18. His game has really bloomed, and I don't think they would want to go stretch drive, play the playoffs, and then still not really know what Fantilli would look like in a top 6 role in the playoffs. So I think they want to give those guys that experience, and especially when a player like Johnson or Fantilli, the more you give them, the more they seem to elevate. I think they want to keep pumping them with more responsibility and see how they handle it and gain that experience, even if they don't handle it well.
Last one from me, Aaron. We talked with you, it was a few years ago, and it was related to some of the free agents that left Columbus.
Yeah.
After they had the runs and beat the Lightning and then saw the Lightning the next year. And I think there was a perception that players don't want to play in Columbus. And what we talked to you about was, well, the players that left, like Bobrovsky wanted to go to Florida.
Yep.
Panarin wanted to go to New York. Matt Duchene wanted to go to Nashville. It wasn't so much, the reality was it wasn't so much that they wanted to get out of Columbus, anywhere but Columbus. They had a specific destination in mind. Dubois wanted out, but I mean, Dubois has bounced around quite a bit, so it wasn't only Columbus.
Yeah.
Do you think that was an unfair characterization? And are you sensing maybe the temperature in the pool is a little different now? Like I was reading Provorov, I was like, I love Columbus. I don't know if they're going to come to an agreement, but if they don't, it's not because he wants to leave Columbus necessarily.
Yeah. Matthew Olivier said that very thing yesterday. He looks like he's getting close to a deal, by the way. You know what? The perception, I mean, look, when you're losing your top forward and your Vezina Trophy goaltender, I mean, I get why the perception was there, right? It was a difficult argument to make that it wasn't. The one thing I made clear to draw a distinction between is I don't think it was ever the city of Columbus. Like Panarin liked it there. Bobrovsky was fine, had a great spot there. Maybe Panarin wanted to live in New York and play for the Rangers. That was his dream. More than anything else, I think the departures were the organization. We wrote a thing a few years ago about players critiquing what it was like to be a Blue Jacket, and there were steps taken by the organization to I just don't think they realized what it was like in other cities versus what it was like for players in Columbus, and they've taken steps to sort of make being a player there a better experience. I think the players are pretty well taken care of everywhere. But when you're a market that's non-traditional, not Original Six, you don't have beautiful weather and a tax-free state, Florida and Tampa, I'm looking at you. You got to have some perks. You got to make it a special place to be. And I've been saying for a while, I think this franchise right now is on the way to being, you can look a few years ahead and say, boy, this team could be really good if they can keep this group together. But that's the challenge, right? Is keeping this group together. And so we'll see. I don't want to say that it's fixed, that guys want to be here. I do think everybody in the room right now seems happy. But you know, what happens when these guys have 200 or 300-point seasons in a row and the Rangers beckon or Toronto beckons for a kid that's from Toronto? Right now, I think things look pretty good, but the challenge is always, can they keep it together?
For any team to keep it going, right?
Yeah.
We're finding out here in Tampa and a bunch of other teams, keeping it together is hard, but it can be gratifying if you hit on the right guys. Aaron, we appreciate the time, sir. It was
Thanks,
great
Aaron.
catching up with you, and hopefully we'll do it again real soon.
Well, thank you guys. I'll see you
You got
tonight.
it. All right. Aaron Portzline joining us. Always great to
I guess
catch
he's
up with him.
traveling. I couldn't tell if that was his residence or hotel.
Yeah, I didn't want
He
to
had
ask
a very
him.
sneaky background. I was like, is he traveling? Because a lot of the reporters cover the team that they're covering from home based on cost. Sounds like
Isn't that crazy?
he's traveling with the team.
It's crazy when you
That
think
they
about it.
aren't traveling anymore, you mean?
That they aren't. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just the world we live in today is just so different.
It is
I mean,
different. People don't
man.
subscribe to newspapers anymore, Greg.
What's that?
Well,
No,
that's what I
told you.
mean. And so the newspapers don't have the revenue to be able to send the reporters on location. They're like, you're just going to have to cover the game from home. Now, he's with The Athletic, which is a little different. It's subscription based, but not every market is kind of pulling its weight, right? I mean, Minnesota can carry 2 hockey writers. Some markets, like this one, don't even have a writer for The Athletic covering hockey anyway.
I often say I was blessed by no doing of my own to be born when I was born, because I was born in half a time where I did have the newspaper when I would wake up and have a bowl of cereal, but then technology had that boom, and you're kind of like, okay, the newspaper's over here, and let me
Right.
look at my phone. But you had the best of both worlds, so I enjoyed looking at the box score. I remember in
Yeah.
high school going into the library. I wasn't there to read a book. Give me the sports section. Sitting there with my friends, reading the paper and the latest articles. But that's just, I mean, how many people do it?
Yeah.
How many people do it? So I get it. It's a different world. I do want to get a little bit into the game.
Yeah, we can return. You want to get into the game tonight or the one from last night?
You want to return a little bit from last night? Is there any closing thoughts that we have from the Panthers?
Look,
Seth
I think
Jones
it'll be
okay.
if they meet in the playoffs, whether it's the first round or if both teams can get past the first round and see in the second round. Like, I think it'll be a heck of a series. One thing I was way off on that I said on yesterday's show is I thought that game might have a little nastiness to it. It really didn't. I mean, even though there were a lot of penalties, but it wasn't due to like post-whistle scrums. I think both teams were so concerned, in a good way, like focused, concerned with defending. And they both did a good job defending.
Yeah.
So
I think
that was the kind of the feel of the game last night. It wasn't a nasty game. It was more of a let's make sure we're buttoned up type of game.
Buttoned up. I think that's probably the right way to look at it. We had a bunch of questions started rolling. Basil says, solid but not exceptional game by the Bolts. Looked tired at times, but found energy in the third and rallied. Certainly show that they can compete with anyone.
I don't know that they were tired, Basil.
Yeah,
I think sometimes you look like you're not creating much. Well, when you're not creating much, sometimes it looks like maybe you're slow or tired. And I just think both teams were defending really well. I like the Lightning. I heard what Nick Paul said. He said we didn't really have much going in the first couple of periods. I like their first period more than the second period. I thought the Panthers dictated play more in the second period than they had in the first. I thought the Lightning were fine defensively in the first period. They had the power plays in the first. I think they had 4 minutes of power play time, so they had a lot of possession based on that. But look, they were down 2-0, so they really pressed the attack, and they got some momentum early in the third, too. Like, they had a couple of chances. Radish right off the bat. Cirelli got open in front. Point scores. Nick Paul gets a 2-on-1 right off the face-off, draws the penalty. I mean, Chafee could have tied the game right there on the delayed call. The pass was just a little bit kind of too far in front of him rather than back where he could kind of get his forehand on it and snap it in. And the Lightning had a pretty good power play then after. Like the first 5 or 6 minutes, they got one. They could have had more than one. Cirelli hit the crossbar. But after that, it was almost like the Panthers settled in, right? And the third period was more even. And then the Lightning had their push at the end with the McDonough breakaway and then that, 6-on-4 chance right at the end of the game.
The tired thing, I don't know. I mean, I think that goes back to trying playing a 60-minute game. I think at times you're going to look like you have a lot of energy. I think there are times where maybe the other team is dictating play and maybe you look a little slower. I didn't come away from that game thinking the Lightning were struggling from that perspective, partner. I just think that the Panthers made a couple of plays.
They did.
And, the Lightning weren't able to convert. And I don't know what else we need to say other than that. Thomas says, why do they keep putting Chafee in the left wing slot on the power play? He's not effective. Why not have Hagel play on power play 1?
Well, they've tried that, Thomas. The lefty on that side of the ice takes away the one-timer. So they started in the Washington game with the unit of Hedman and Hagel with the other 3. And the first 2 power plays didn't generate much. The Lightning, that was the period in which they had 3 power plays in the Washington game in the first period. So on the third one, Jeff Halpern went back to that kind of righty-heavy unit that we saw earlier in the season with Radish replacing Hedman, Chafee replacing Hagel. The difference was instead of Chafee in the bumper, Point was in the bumper. Chafee was at the left circle. It's interesting that we got that comment from Thomas because I know Phil has said this. I think you've said it too, Greg. If you have Braden Point on the ice, he should be in the bumper. Because that's where he scored a lot of his power play goals. So if you're putting Point in the bumper, somebody has to be at the left circle, and you're picking a righty. Chafee scored from there against Washington. He had some chances. I mean, you just mentioned the one that hit Gensel. It might have gone in otherwise. And I think in the first period he had an opportunity as well that Bobrovsky stopped. The power play did enough to score. It wasn't a quiet 0 for 7. They had a couple of their chances that were quiet. I thought the 4 minutes at the end of the second period, they didn't do enough with that. They could have made it a 1-goal game then.
Right.
and that might have changed the feel of the third period a little bit, at least at the start, although the Lightning scored early in the third, so maybe that's not accurate. Those were probably the 2 power plays that were the quietest of the ones the Lightning had in the game last night. But, I mean, what did they finish with? They had a lot of shots on the power play, 11 power play shots. That doesn't even count the 2 that hit the post. I think the Cirelli one off the crossbar, it was still a power play. It was almost up. The Hedman one at the end of the game for sure was a power play shot. Those don't even count because they technically missed the net because they hit the post.
Yeah. You know, I go back with what's worked, and I understand they like to switch things up, so I'm okay with that. Hagel also took a nasty shot yesterday, didn't he? Radish.
And let me just add this, Greg. It's not that having Hagel at the left circle is a non-starter. I mean, they've gone to it before. They've had success as a power play as a unit with Hedman and Hagel joining those other guys, Point, Kucherov, Gensel. But it's like, what are you gaining? What are you taking away? For sure, what you were taking away with Hagel at that left circle, you were taking away the one-timer from that side. So when Kucherov has the puck, the penalty kill team knows that if he's going cross ice to Hagel, there's no shot coming. What does that do? It means that, you know, they have one less thing to worry about. So
yeah, I think
that goes into the logic of it. It would be interesting, Greg. We've talked about, you know, with the Lightning target a forward, and if they get, let's say, a top 6 who would really play right wing, theoretically, with Hagel and Cirelli, a right winger who is a right-handed shot, may slot in on that power play. I mean, I'm going way out on a limb here. But like, if they get a forward who is a righty, who has some scoring pedigree, you could see that player slot in there.
Yeah.
In what we'll call the Stamkos spot.
Right. I want to get to my neighbor, Lucas, who says, guys, after yelling shoot at my TV for the 30th time last night, I got curious and went down a stats rabbit hole.
We love the stats rabbit hole.
Would it shock you that Point and Gensel only get about 2.6 shots per game each? 2 guys playing with the best passer in the league. You'd think they'd have the opportunity to have double or even triple that. Ties into what Dave said yesterday, that the line doesn't feel like it's been taking over games lately. The total shot attempts aren't even that much more, only around 4 a game.
But this is the whole year he's looking at, and they have been very effective as a line. I was just saying the last couple of games, I think they've been quieter. Last night, they were less quiet. I thought that they did have a pretty good game last night, the 3 of them, and Point scored. So, look, there is an element of they look sometimes to pass instead of shoot. On the power play, Point and Gensel are usually at the end of a play that is being set up where they have an opportunity to shoot, and sometimes that play never reaches them. Like if Gensel gets the puck at the goal line extended, he's not just going to shoot the puck. Like he's setting it up. He's a facilitator to kind of give it back to Kucherov or maybe go somewhere else with it. When he's shooting the puck, it might be a tip. It might be a rebound. Point, they like to get the puck to Point, particularly when he's in the bumper. But the penalty kill unit is trying to take that away. So it's difficult sometimes to get him the puck. But when he gets the puck in that slot area between the hash marks, he does look to shoot. So again, that's one of those stats. Like, I think there's like what Lucas is advancing as a theory, which is they are passing up shots. There is an element of truth to that, but also I don't think that they are shot averse. I think, especially in the power play, they have to get the puck in a position where they can do damage rather than just like wrist it at the net to add another shot to their total. 5-on-5, yeah. I mean, they like to make plays. That's the makeup of that line, but it's hard to argue with their production.
I also think, too, I feel like the shot statistic, we have to weigh that a little bit differently than we did a few years back. For the reasons that Andre Vasilevsky gave that quote to, I think it was for NHL.com, about why save percentages might not be as high. I think shooters are a little more fine when it comes to their shooting.
Selective, yeah.
Selective, so maybe they're looking for the best shot. And maybe that's a compliment to the goaltenders. You know, they're not just taking any old shot. They're sometimes making that extra pass to make sure that they're able to beat the goaltender. I think that might be some of it. That's just my hunch, as they say. Al says lots of games, a lot of names being talked about, but I wonder if JBB goes off the board and tries for a guy like Shane Pinto, Morgan Geekie, or Kevin Strunland. Also, draft pick only count if they hit, so might as well use them to upgrade with a proven player.
I don't think the Senators are trading Shane Pinto because the Senators are in the mix to get in the playoffs, and this would be a huge step for them. I may be wrong on that. I mean, I'm just giving you my opinion. So Steve shared the news with us before we went on the air. Brad Marchand is now out week to week. And it's like he won't play before the trade deadline. I'm like, were the Bruins thinking of trading Brad Marchand? It's like I would think that Brad Marchand would want to stay a Bruin his whole career. I don't know. The Bruins are statistically, in terms of the standings, the Bruins are close to where Ottawa is. But this is a perfect example of two teams that may have a different mindset about where they are, right? The Senators haven't been in the playoffs since 2017. This would be a huge step for them just to get in. Roll the dice. Let's see what happens. The Bruins have been in the playoffs every year. The last year they missed was maybe 2016. They kind of had their great run in the early 2010s. And then they actually missed the playoffs a couple of years. And then they got really, really good again very quickly. They won the Cup, or they got to the final, I should say, in 2019. So this would be quite the end of a run if they can't get in. And maybe they're like, we need to retool. If that's the case, is it possible Morgan Geekie would be available? He's having a great year. Great year for Boston. But the Bruins might be like, Morgan Geekie is going to be part of our solution moving forward. We're not trading this guy. Who's the third guy he had on there?
Strunland.
I like him. Stenland. Yeah, he's in Utah.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
He was a big part of Florida's fourth line last year. I mean, he's among the league leaders in faceoff percentage. So he's kind of like a Glendening, honestly, except he's younger. I don't know what Utah is looking to do. Utah is on the wrong end of the playoff cut line, but they are close enough that I'm not sure they're going to be a seller. And they may like Stenland.
You know who keeps popping up is Yanni Gord. And I've
seen
but
that. He's
not
back playing yet. That's a tricky one. That's sports hernia surgery.
They kind of did that each team, who they may get in the Athletic. They kind of went down that, and Gord's name popped up.
For the Lightning?
For the Lightning.
All right, Steve said he's coming back this week. But, you have to make your trade by the 7th, which is in, 3 days. So, yeah, he may be on target to return, but we have seen examples of guys who have had this sports hernia surgery, and they try and come back, and they suffer a setback. It's not career ending. It's nothing like that. It's a tricky recovery, and sometimes the first time doesn't take. I mean, I don't know if that's exactly what Stamkos had with heading into the bubble and all of that. It was more like core. They called it the core injury, but it's kind of in the same ballpark there. I don't know. I mean, the guy has not played since December. That's
Yanni Gord doesn't
That's a
have
tricky
setbacks.
one, and he's on an expiring contract. So if you get him, there's no guarantee that you're going to have him beyond this year.
No. And honestly,
normally I would say, like, if he had been playing all year and playing like he normally does, which is like nonstop, right? Like the Brandon Hagel Energizer Bunny that we know Yanni Gord is, be like, great acquisition for the Lightning or for any team. But the fact that he's been out so long kind of gives you the caution sign a little bit. Flashing lights.
Yeah, I don't know. That's an interesting one. You just hear that name. I think some of that is just because the familiarity with it, but I get it. Anthony says, the power play in the same spot as 60 games ago. Put Paul or Tony in front. Gets to the left, 2 passes, shot. I don't like this Halpern process. You know what you're getting from the Panthers. Anyone annoying board battles. Moser with a flyby after the turnover. Just a tad off.
Was that on the Barkov goal? I didn't think Moser did a flyby. Maybe he did. I don't know. We were talking about the Kucherov being picked.
He got picked.
That play. So look, when the power play is on any individual opportunity, it is less likely that the power play scores than more likely. And the best percentages now are like what? High 20s, right? Gord practiced yesterday, centered Kraken's fourth line. Thank you, Steve. So look, he's on the mend. Maybe that kind of assuages some teams, and they're like, we want to go for this guy. We'll see. I'm having a hard time looking at last night's game and looking at that 0 for 7 and saying the Lightning were just flat as a pancake and they generated nothing. We've seen games like that where the power play is just off and they keep getting chance after chance after chance, and it gets worse and worse and worse. That was not the case last night. They had 11 shots. They had scoring chances. The power play, as we enter play tonight, is 5th in the NHL. But 5th in the NHL comes out to 26.2%. So we want to round down a little bit. That means for every 4 power play chances, 3 are not succeeding. Does that mean that you want to like revamp the entire way that you're going to try and do it when you're 5th in the league? I don't think so. Now, look, I'm not opposed to the whole idea of a couple of passes and get a puck to the net. I like that. But the Lightning have personnel that, like, they've been able to execute at a very high level for a decade. I mean, honestly, right? I mean, even before Jeff Halpern took over the power play. And since he's taken over the power play, they've had one of the best power plays in the NHL. So, to me, that's kind of case closed. And if there's anybody who is particular about kind of exploring every option, it's Jeff Halpern. I mean, I've known the guy for 15 plus years on and off. When he joined the Lightning, it was 08-09. He was with them for a couple of years and then retired a few years later and got into coaching. But, I mean, he is not like, let's try this. Like, he is very methodical about everything that he does. So whatever a fan might have in his or her mind about, like, well, they should try this, I can assure you that Jeff Halpern has considered it and maybe floated the idea to the other coaches. But ultimately, the decision is his, and it's hard to argue with the results.
I would agree with you. He said, guys, I have been concerned the whole season about the power play. I don't care about the numbers. I think it's not clutch. You can't expect to pass it around to everyone and score an unscreened goalie. Point isn't finding open spaces. Gensel is always to the side. That's been his big beef about Gensel. You know, not going to the net per se. I mean, that is such a debatable conversation, you know, because if you say something, it's not clutch, how are you defining that? Because to me, that's in the eye of the beholder, because if you look at the record, the Lightning are in a playoff spot. So what are you saying? They need to be...
I think he is... I remember he had this point earlier in the year, particularly when the Lightning were struggling in some games that were close in the third period. Maybe they're down 1, they get a power play in the third period, they don't score. Or it's 2-2 in the third, they get a power play, they don't score to get the lead, and then maybe they lose it. Fair. But how many power plays are they getting in the third period of a close game where a goal would make the difference? And if we consider they're only averaging 1 goal out of every 4 opportunities, the odds are that them or any team is less likely to score than more likely to score.
So, I mean,
and they were a little unlucky last night.
That type of analysis, I don't mind. But it is hard to look at games and also then now look at the Lightning's record and say that is a problem. Those two do not connect. Because what's going to end up happening is we're projecting into the playoffs. And so this is where the debate's going to come in. If the Lightning are struggling and they get a power play opportunity and they get 2 in a low-scoring game and they go 0 for 2, this is where the clutch conversation is going to come in. And so that's hard to have this conversation now when really the Lightning have been at the top or in a very good spot when it comes to the power play. and have won a lot of games this year so far.
So this is it's not a total non sequitur, but you're going to laugh at this comment because I'm sure you have had players in your youth following. You probably thought about them this way. So when I was in high school, I went to a prep school, so I was away. So we had dorms and all of that. So it was in Connecticut. So you kind of had some Boston, Massachusetts area kids that were like pro Boston, but you also had a lot of pro New York, right? It was kind of in the middle. So there was one kid who was a huge New York Mets fan. And this was in the 80s when the Mets, they won the World Series against the Red Sox in 1986. Anyway, it was in this time frame. So George Foster, who was a great player with the Cincinnati Reds in the 70s, finished his career with the Mets. I remember there's one year, some baseball aficionado can look this up. George Foster had this enormous season in terms of home runs. And this classmate of mine, he could not stand George Foster. He's like, George Foster, he hits all his home runs when the Mets are already up 5-1. Meaning it's kind of what Anthony was talking about, clutch, bottom of the ninth, it's 1-1. George Foster isn't hitting a home run when the Mets are already up by 7 runs.
Right.
He hits a home run, right? So this is what I will say in response to that. I don't think the Lightning have scored the majority of their power play goals when they've been already up by 3 or 4 goals, where the percentage isn't really telling you the story of how impactful those goals are. Now, Anthony may have data that we don't have because we haven't done the research to see that in a close game, late in the game, the power play is not producing. But I tell you what is also important. The first goal of the game, if it's a power play goal, is important.
Yeah.
In Washington, Mitchell Chaffee's power play goal was a big, big goal in that game. Did it happen in the third period? No. But it gave the Lightning the lead, a lead they never relinquished. They forced the Capitals to play catch-up the whole rest of the game. What happens if it's 2-1 in the second period and the Lightning get a power play and score to go up 3-1? That's a huge goal. It may not fit the exact category that Anthony is talking about, but to me, those are important goals. Dare I say clutch? I don't know if I want to say clutch, but they are important. So it's not the George Foster scenario that my former classmate was upset about. I don't think that would explain where the Lightning's percentage is at this year. But that's one person's opinion. And if we get into the playoffs and the Lightning have a chance to win a game or grab the lead late or tie the game in the third period with a power play and they don't score, then, I'm sure Anthony's going to let us know about it. But I don't think it means that they can't score. I mean, they're at 26.2% this year.
Yeah.
That's a top 5 power play percentage in the NHL this year.
For sure. Keep those coming. We always love those debates, and we'll have more of it tomorrow. Lightning taking on the Blue Jackets, 7 o'clock start, which means we're on the air at 6:30, and partner, I will talk to you.
No skate this morning, so we're unclear on the lineup. I mean, Cam Atkinson did score in the first game at Columbus, which was the sibling trip, right?
Yep.
His brothers were there. He did not play in the second game, though, so we'll see if the Lightning keep the same lineup, and we'll see if Johansson gets the start.
Partner, I will talk to you tonight.
Yeah, talk to you tonight.
Should be a lot of fun. Thanks.
We'll be on the air again tomorrow.
You got it. Noon to 1. Aaron Portzline, thank you. Thanks to Steve Ersnick, Jared Johnson. And for you guys listening, I am Greg Linnelli. You've been listening to Power Lunch on Lightning Radio.